What happened next made the entire ballroom cry. Nobody in that room expected a single maid to bring a billionaire's entire world crashing down. Not because of what she did, but because of what she didn't do. She stood there, hands shaking, jewelry scattered across the marble counter, a mountain of cash beside it, and one woman pointing a finger straight at her face, screaming for the police. Everyone believed the maid was guilty. Everyone except the one man in that mansion who actually knew her heart. And when he finally opened his mouth to speak, the entire room went silent. 'Cause what he said next changed everything. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from and which country you belong to. I'd love to know who's here with me tonight. Today's story is one of the most emotional ones we've ever told. A story about class, betrayal, and a truth so shocking it left an entire mansion in tears. Stay with me till the end because you will not see this twist coming. Nobody looks at the person cleaning the floor and imagines they could be the strongest person in the room. Angela Reyes had been working at the coal estate in Greenwich, Connecticut for 6 years. She was 34 years old, a single mother to an 8-year-old daughter named Sophia, and she had learned a long time ago that dignity had nothing to do with money. Every morning, she arrived before sunrise, tied her hair back, and moved through the massive white halls of the Cole mansion like she had memorized every corner of it, because she had. The mansion belonged to Daniel Cole, a 34-year-old real estate mogul who had built his fortune from nothing but a small construction loan and a stubborn refusal to quit. Daniel wasn't like the other wealthy men in Greenwich. He didn't look through his staff like they were furniture. He knew Angela's daughter's name. He knew that Angela's husband had passed away 4 years earlier in a car accident, leaving her to raise Sophia alone. He knew that every dollar Angela earned went straight into a savings account labeled, in her own handwriting, Sophia's future. What Daniel didn't know, not yet, was that Angela had become the only person in that house he could actually trust. The mansion had seen a lot of staff come and go. Some quit because the work was too demanding. Others were let go for reasons nobody talked about openly, though the housekeeper, Mrs. Higgins, liked to whisper that some of them just didn't fit the image Miss Victoria wanted for this house. Victoria Sinclair was Daniel's fiancée. 30 years old, stunning, sharp-tongued, and always dressed like she had somewhere more important to be. She had come into Daniel's life 2 years earlier, at a charity gala in Manhattan, and within 8 months, there was a ring on her finger. Daniel's friends said he had never smiled that much in his life. His late mother, before she passed, had only met Victoria once, and according to Mrs. Higgins, she had pulled Daniel aside afterward and said something nobody else heard. Whatever it was, Daniel never repeated it. Angela didn't have an opinion about Victoria, or at least she tried not to. It wasn't her place. But she noticed things. She noticed the way Victoria's smile disappeared the moment Daniel left the room. She noticed how Victoria never said thank you to the staff, not once, not in 6 years. She noticed how Victoria's eyes lingered a little too long on the safe in Daniel's private study, the one that held his late mother's jewelry, along with the cash reserved for the foundation's monthly donations. But none of that was Angela's business. Her business was making sure the floors shined, the linens were pressed, and Sophia had a warm dinner waiting for her when she got home from school. That week, the entire household had been turned upside down. Daniel and Victoria's engagement party was only 3 days away. A massive black tie event meant to introduce Victoria to New York's elite as the future Mrs. Cole. 200 guests. 5-piece orchestra. A charity jewelry auction to benefit children's hospitals, using pieces from Daniel's late mother's private collection, alongside a display of the evening's donation total in cash, arranged for photographs before it was wired to the foundation the next morning. Angela had been asked to help prepare the East Wing for the event, polishing the very glass display case that would hold the jewelry and the neatly stacked bills. She remembered running her cloth carefully over the case, thinking about how strange it was that so much wealth could sit behind a thin sheet of glass while across town, families like hers counted every single dollar twice before spending it. "You're doing a wonderful job, Angela," Daniel had said, walking past that afternoon, loosening his tie after a long meeting. "Sophia doing well in school?" "She's doing great, Mr. Cole. Thank you for asking." He smiled, the kind of smile that made the staff feel like people, not shadows. "You've been with this family a long time. My mother trusted you. That means something to me." Angela didn't know it then, but those words would be the only thing standing between her and complete ruin 3 days later. Because in 3 days, everything she had built, her reputation, her paycheck, her daughter's future, was going to be destroyed in front of 200 strangers. And the person responsible for it was going to be the last person anyone suspected. The night of the party was coming, and nothing would ever be the same again. The night of the engagement party, the Cole mansion looked like something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers threw golden light across the marble floors. Waiters in white gloves carried trays of champagne through a crowd of New York's wealthiest families. A live orchestra played softly near the grand staircase, and outside, a line of luxury cars stretched down the long driveway, one after another, dropping off guests dressed in gowns and tailored suits worth more than most people's yearly salary. Angela had been assigned to the East Wing that evening, where the charity display had been set up exactly as planned. Behind reinforced glass sat Daniel's late mother's jewelry collection. Diamond necklaces, sapphire earrings, a ruby bracelet that had been in the Cole family for 3 generations, worth close to $700,000. Beside it, neatly bundled and stacked for the photographers, sat the evening's donation total. $300,000 in cash, collected from guests earlier that night for the Children's Hospital Fund. Combined, just over $1 million sat behind that single pane of glass. Victoria stood near the display most of the evening, greeting guests, laughing at the right moments, glowing under the chandelier light in a stunning pink gown, a diamond necklace of her own sparkling at her throat. She looked, everyone agreed, like she belonged in that house. But Angela noticed something else. Every time Victoria passed the display case, her eyes flicked toward it. Quick, careful, almost hungry. And twice that evening, Angela saw her step away from the party entirely, phone pressed to her ear, walking briskly toward the east hallway, out of sight from the guests. It wasn't Angela's place to wonder why, so she didn't. She kept working, refilling trays, guiding guests to the powder room, making sure everything ran smoothly for the man who had always treated her with respect. Around 10 o'clock, Daniel took the small stage near the staircase, tapping a glass to get everyone's attention. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said, his voice warm, his eyes finding Victoria across the room. 2 years ago, I met a woman who changed my life. Tonight, I'm proud to introduce her to all of you not just as my fiancée, but as someone who I believe is going to help me build something even bigger than this company. A life built on love and on giving back. The crowd applauded. Victoria stepped up beside him, smiling brilliantly, slipping her arm through his. "Thank you, Daniel. And thank you all for your incredible generosity tonight. Every dollar in that case behind us is going straight to children who need it most." More applause. Champagne glasses raised. For a moment, the entire room glowed with warmth and hope. Then, at 11:15, the lights near the east wing flickered, a brief 2-second power dip that nobody but the security team even noticed. The backup generator kicked in instantly. The party continued, uninterrupted. Angela was in the kitchen at that exact moment, helping plate dessert trays, nowhere near the east wing. At 11:40, one of the event photographers approached the display case to take the final promotional photo of the jewelry and cash, a photo meant to be released to the press the next morning, celebrating the foundation's success. He froze. The case was still locked, still sealed, still exactly as it had been arranged. But it was empty. Every piece of jewelry, gone. Every stack of cash, gone. Only the velvet display cushions remained, arranged as if nothing had ever been there at all. The photographer's scream cut through the orchestra music like a blade. Within seconds, 200 guests turned toward the east wing. Daniel pushed through the crowd first, Victoria right behind him, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. When Daniel reached the case and saw it empty, his face went pale. "Someone get security," he said. His voice suddenly hard, unrecognizable. "Now!" And that was the moment, the exact moment, that would change Angela Reyes's life forever. Because within 30 seconds, Victoria Sinclair turned around, scanned the crowd of stunned faces, and her eyes landed on the one person she had decided, long before that night, would take the fall. It was her. Victoria's voice rang out across the ballroom, sharp and certain, cutting through the music that the orchestra had finally stopped playing. Every head turned. Every conversation died. She was pointing directly at Angela, who had just walked in from the kitchen carrying a tray of dessert plates, completely unaware of what had happened only moments earlier. "What?" Angela started, confused, the tray still in her hands. "You were in this wing tonight," Victoria said, stepping closer, her voice rising with every word. "I saw you near this case earlier. You've worked in this house for years. You know exactly where everything is, exactly how the security system works. $1 million doesn't just disappear, Angela. Someone took it. And it wasn't anyone in this room wearing a $5,000 gown." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones came out. A few guests began recording without even realizing what they were doing. Pure instinct, the way people reach for their phones when something feels like it's about to become a headline. Angela set the tray down, her hands trembling. "Miss Sinclair, I haven't been near the East Wing all night. I've been in the kitchen since 10:30, ask anyone." "Convenient," Victoria snapped, her eyes narrowing. "Very convenient timing to suddenly be somewhere with an alibi." "Victoria," Daniel said quietly, stepping between them, "let's not do this here. Let's let security handle." "Daniel." Victoria turned to him, her expression shifting instantly into something softer, more wounded, more desperate. "My future, our future was in that case. Your mother's jewelry. The children's hospital money. And she's the only staff member who had unrestricted access to every room in this house tonight." Her voice cracked just slightly, just enough. "I trusted her. We all did. And look what happened." The crowd murmured in agreement. A few guests nodded slowly, the way people do when they've already decided who the villain is before hearing a single piece of evidence. Angela felt the room closing in around her. 200 pairs of eyes, all fixed on her, all filled with suspicion. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her own ears. Sophia's face flashed in her mind. Her daughter, waiting at home with the neighbor, expecting her mother to come back with stories about the fancy party, not with police lights flashing outside their small apartment. "Please," Angela said, her voice barely above a whisper now. "I would never do this. I've worked for this family for 6 years. Mrs. Higgins can tell you, I was in the kitchen the entire—" "Someone call the police," Victoria said, cutting her off completely, turning back toward the stunned crowd. "I want this handled properly. Tonight." Daniel stood frozen for a moment, looking between his fiancée, trembling with what looked like genuine distress, and Angela, whose eyes were filling with tears, her hands still shaking at her sides. 6 years. 6 years of Angela showing up early, staying late, never once giving him a reason to doubt her. His mother had trusted her. He had trusted her. But $1 million was gone. And Victoria's accusation, spoken with such certainty in front of 200 witnesses, was already spreading through the room like wildfire, whispered from guest to guest, already being typed into text messages, already becoming the story of the night. "Daniel," Victoria said again, softer this time, placing a hand on his arm. "I know this is hard. But we have to do the right thing." Daniel looked at Angela one more time. And for the first time in 6 years, She saw something in his eyes she never thought she'd see directed at her. "Angela," he said quietly, "I need you to wait in the security office. Just until we sort this out." The tray of desserts sat forgotten on the floor beside her. As two security guards approached to escort her out of the ballroom, Angela caught one last glimpse of Victoria's face over Daniel's shoulder. And for just 1 second, one single second that nobody else seemed to notice, Victoria smiled. The security office was cold, small, and silent except for the hum of a computer monitor and the distant sound of the party still murmuring on without her. Angela sat in a plastic chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap, replaying the last 20 minutes over and over in her mind. She hadn't been near the East Wing. She hadn't touched that case. She hadn't stolen a single dollar in her entire life, let alone $1 million. But it didn't matter what she knew to be true. It only mattered what 200 guests believed they had just witnessed. The police arrived 40 minutes later. 2 officers spoke with Daniel privately first, then with Victoria, who dabbed carefully at her eyes with a tissue, careful not to smear her makeup, describing in detail how suspicious Angela had seemed lately. A lie so smooth it barely sounded like one. When it was finally Angela's turn to speak with the officers, she answered every question honestly. Yes, she had worked in the house for 6 years. No, she had never had any disciplinary issues. Yes, she had access to most rooms in the mansion, as most staff did. No, she had not been near the East Wing that night. She had been in the kitchen, and at least 4 other staff members could confirm it. The officers wrote everything down, their faces unreadable, and told her not to leave town while the investigation continued. By the time Angela finally left the mansion that night, it was past 2 in the morning. She had been quietly informed by Mrs. Higgins, with tears in the older woman's eyes, that she was suspended from her position without pay, pending the outcome of the investigation. "I don't believe it," Mrs. Higgins whispered, squeezing Angela's hand at the back door. "Not for 1 second. You hear me? Not 1 second." "Thank you," Angela managed, though her voice barely worked anymore. She drove home in silence, her hands gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white, tears finally falling once she was alone in the car, away from the eyes of 200 strangers who had already decided she was a thief. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, after the last guests had finally gone home and the staff had cleared away the remains of what should have been the happiest night of Daniel's life, Daniel sat alone in his study, staring at the empty display case that security had brought in for examination. Something was bothering him. Something he couldn't quite name yet. He thought back to Angela's face when Victoria accused her. Not the face of someone caught, but the face of someone completely blindsided. He had seen guilty people before, in business deals gone wrong, in partners who had tried to cheat him. Guilt had a particular look. Fear had a different one entirely. Angela's face had been fear. Pure, confused, desperate fear. He also thought about something small, something that had happened so quickly he'd almost missed it, the way Victoria's eyes had swept the room before landing on Angela, almost like she was searching for someone to blame rather than reacting to a genuine shock. He shook his head. He was exhausted. He was imagining things. Victoria was his fiancée. She loved him. She wouldn't. A knock interrupted his thoughts. It was the head of security, a serious man named Frank Delgado, who had worked for the Cole family for over a decade. "Mr. Cole," Frank said, closing the door behind him. "I pulled the footage from the East Wing cameras like you asked." "And?" Frank hesitated. "There's a gap, sir. 11:02 to 11:41. 39 minutes. Completely blank." Daniel sat up straighter. The backup generator kicked in during the power dip. The cameras should have. They should have, Frank agreed. But someone accessed the security panel manually, right before the dip. From the inside. Daniel felt something cold settle in his chest. Who has access to that panel? Frank looked down at his notes, then back up at Daniel, choosing his next words carefully. Very few people, sir. Myself. And. He paused. And Ms. Sinclair. Angela didn't sleep that night. She sat at her small kitchen table long after Sophia had fallen asleep, staring at the stack of unpaid bills she had been slowly chipping away at for months. Rent, Sophia's school supplies, the used car that kept needing repairs. Her savings account, the one labeled Sophia's future, had just enough for 2 more months of breathing room. Without her paycheck from the coal estate, that breathing room would disappear fast. By morning the story was everywhere. A guest at the party had posted a shaky video online. Victoria's voice, sharp and accusing, ringing out over the silent ballroom. It was her. The video had already been viewed hundreds of thousands of times by the time Angela woke up. Her name whispered in comment sections by strangers who knew nothing about her, who had never met her daughter, who had no idea she had worked 6 years without a single complaint. Sophia found her mother crying quietly at the kitchen table that morning and, without a word, wrapped her small arms around her neck. "Mama, are you okay?" Angela wiped her eyes quickly, forcing a smile. "I'm okay, baby. Just tired. Are we still going to Grandma's for pancakes on Sunday?" The question nearly broke her completely. Such a small, innocent thing. Pancakes with her mother, a tradition they'd kept since Sophia was a baby. While Angela had no idea if she'd even have a job, a reputation, or a way to pay for pancakes at all by Sunday. "Of course we are," Angela whispered, holding her daughter tighter than she meant to. Across town, in a very different kitchen, Victoria Sinclair sat at the Marble Island in the Cole mansion, sipping coffee, scrolling through the same viral video with something close to satisfaction hidden beneath her carefully composed expression of concern. The plan had worked perfectly. The staff member with the least power, the least money for lawyers, the least ability to fight back. Exactly who Victoria had chosen, exactly why she had chosen her. Angela was the perfect scapegoat. Quiet, hard-working, powerless. Nobody questions the wealthy fiancé over the maid. What Victoria didn't know was that 39 minutes of missing security footage, and one very observant head of security, had already started unraveling the story she thought was airtight. Daniel hadn't slept much either. He'd spent most of the night reviewing everything Frank had shown him. The access logs, the timestamps, the eerie coincidence of a power dip occurring at the exact moment the cameras needed to see nothing. He kept thinking about something his mother had told him 2 years earlier, after meeting Victoria for the first and only time. "She's charming, Daniel. Charming people are wonderful at parties. But you should watch how she treats people who can't do anything for her. That tells you everything." At the time, he'd brushed it off as his mother being overly cautious. Now, sitting alone in his study at 6 in the morning, those words echoed louder than they ever had before. He thought about Angela. 6 years of quiet loyalty, never once asking for anything beyond her paycheck, always kind to the other staff, always gentle with the house even though it wasn't hers, always the first to arrive and the last to leave. He thought about Victoria. Beautiful, magnetic, endlessly charming in front of a crowd, but strangely cold the moment the cameras and audiences disappeared. He picked up his phone and called Frank. "I want a full financial background check," Daniel said quietly. "Discreet. Thorough. And I want to know everyone Victoria has spoken to on the phone in the last month." "Mr. Cole," Frank said carefully, "are you sure you want to go down this road? If you're wrong about this—" "I'm not asking because I want to be right," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the storm building inside him. "I'm asking because an innocent woman might be about to lose everything, and I refuse to let that happen without knowing the full truth first." He hung up the phone and looked out the window at the gray morning light, a single thought settling firmly in his chest, one he couldn't shake no matter how hard he tried. Someone in that house had lied to him, and he was going to find out who. 3 days passed before Frank returned with anything solid, and every one of those days felt like a year to Angela. The police investigation was moving slowly, treating her as the primary suspect based almost entirely on Victoria's confident, tearful testimony. Angela had been called in twice more for questioning. Her lawyer, a young public defender named Rosa Martinez, who had taken the case pro bono after hearing about it, warned her gently that without new evidence, this could drag on for months, maybe longer, and that a criminal charge, even an unproven one, could follow her for the rest of her life. "I know you're innocent," Rosa told her during their second meeting. "But knowing and proving are two very different things." Angela nodded, exhausted, her savings dwindling faster than she wanted to admit. She had started quietly looking for other work, though every application asked the same question: current employment status, and every honest answer led to the same uncomfortable silence. Meanwhile, inside the Cole mansion, Frank Delgado sat across from Daniel with a folder in his hands, his expression grim. "What did you find?" Daniel asked. Frank slid the folder across the desk. "Victoria's been making regular cash withdrawals for the last 8 months. Not huge amounts individually, but consistent, $2,000–3,000 at a time, sometimes twice a week. All from an account you don't have access to. Her personal account." Daniel frowned, flipping through the pages. "Withdrawals for what?" "That's what took time to figure out," Frank said. "I had to be careful. But I found a pattern. Every withdrawal happens within 24 hours of a phone call to the same number. Untraceable burner phone, but I managed to track the general location it's registered to. A private club in Manhattan. High-stakes poker. Members only." Daniel felt his stomach turn. "Victoria doesn't gamble. She's told me that herself more than once." "With respect, sir," Frank said quietly, "there's more." He pulled out a second set of documents. "I also looked into her financial history before she met you. There were 2 prior relationships, both with wealthy men. Both ended within a year of engagement. Both men, when I reached out discreetly, mentioned unexplained missing valuables around the same time their relationships ended. Nothing was ever proven. No charges were filed. But the pattern is concerning." Daniel sat back in his chair, his mind racing. 2 years. 2 years of building a life with a woman who might have been planning something like this the entire time. "There's one more thing," Frank said, hesitating slightly before continuing. "The man behind the burner phone number. I managed to get a partial identification through the poker club's membership list. Goes by Marcus Vale. Runs high-stakes games for wealthy clients who don't want their gambling habits public. Victoria's been in deep with him for a while, based on the withdrawal amounts. And gambling debts like that, sir, they don't stay quiet forever. Especially not with someone like Marcus Vale." Daniel closed his eyes, pressing his fingers against his temples. "You're telling me my fiancé might owe a dangerous man a significant amount of money?" "I'm telling you it's a strong possibility," Frank said. "And I'm telling you that 39 minutes of missing security footage, on the exact night $1 million disappeared, from a case that only a handful of people had access to disable, doesn't feel like a coincidence anymore." Daniel sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the folder in front of him, the weight of what he now understood pressing down on his chest like something physical. He thought about Angela, sitting somewhere across town right now, likely terrified, likely struggling, likely wondering how the family she had served faithfully for 6 years could so easily believe the worst about her. He thought about his mother's warning. And he thought about Victoria, at that very moment, probably somewhere in this house, playing the role of the devastated fiancé while an innocent woman's life fell apart because of a lie. "Get me everything," Daniel said finally. His voice quiet but absolutely certain. "Every transaction. Every phone record. Every piece of proof you can legally obtain. I want it airtight before I do anything. Because when I confront her, I want there to be nowhere left for her to hide." It took another full week to build the case. A week that felt unbearably long for everyone involved, but especially for Angela, who received the news on day 5 that formal charges were being considered against her, based on Victoria's continued insistence and a lack of any alternative suspect. Rosa Martinez called Angela with the update, her voice apologetic. "I'm doing everything I can, Angela. But without new evidence, the DA's office might move forward. I need you to prepare yourself for that possibility." Angela sat on her small couch that night after Sophia had gone to bed, staring at the wall, trying to imagine how she would explain a criminal trial to her 8-year-old daughter. How she would explain that sometimes the truth doesn't matter as much as who has the loudest, most convincing voice in the room. She didn't know that, at that exact moment across town, Frank Delgado was showing Daniel Cole the final piece of evidence that would change everything. "We got him," Frank said, sliding a laptop across the desk. Marcus Vale's associate agreed to talk, once we made it clear we weren't interested in exposing his gambling operation, only in the truth about the missing jewelry and cash. Turns out Victoria didn't just owe Marcus money. She'd been planning this for weeks. Daniel watched the screen as Frank played an audio recording, legally obtained through the associate's cooperation, of a phone call between Victoria and Marcus from 2 weeks before the engagement party. Victoria's voice, unmistakable, slightly muffled through the recording. "I told you I have a way to cover it. There's a display case, jewelry and cash, at least $1 million combined. I have access to the security panel. I just need 30, maybe 40 minutes with the cameras down." Marcus's voice, low and impatient. "And the staff. Somebody's gonna notice $1 million gone." "There's a maid," Victoria said, her tone almost bored, almost casual, as if she were discussing something as simple as dinner plans. "Quiet, hard-working type. Nobody with money for lawyers. Easiest person in the world to blame. Nobody questions the fiancé over the help." Daniel felt something inside him go completely cold and completely still at the same time. "There's more," Frank said quietly, pausing the recording. "We tracked the jewelry. 3 pieces were pawned 2 days after the party at a shop in Queens, under a false name, but the shop owner remembered the woman clearly enough to confirm her identity from a photo. The rest of the jewelry and the cash, we believe it's still with Marcus, held as partial payment against Victoria's debt, until she can arrange the rest." Daniel sat completely still for a long moment, the recording still open on the screen in front of him, Victoria's casual, cruel words echoing in his mind. "Nobody questions the fiancé over the help. Easiest person in the world to blame. 6 years of loyalty. 6 years of trust." And Angela had been chosen, deliberately, coldly, specifically because she had the least power to fight back. "Mr. Cole," Frank said carefully, "what do you want to do with this?" Daniel closed the laptop slowly, his jaw tight, his hands steady despite the storm raging inside him. "I want to give her exactly what she gave Angela," he said quietly. "A room full of witnesses. And nowhere left to run." Daniel spent the next 4 days planning carefully, methodically, refusing to let a single detail slip that might tip Victoria off before he was ready. He met privately with Rosa Martinez, Angela's lawyer, and handed over copies of everything Frank had gathered: the recording, the financial records, the pawnshop confirmation, the security access logs. Rosa's eyes filled with tears of relief as she listened to the recording for the first time. "This is more than enough," she said. "This isn't just enough to clear Angela's name. This is enough to have the charges against her formally dropped, and enough to bring criminal charges against Victoria for theft, and for filing a false police report. I want it handled properly," Daniel said. "Through the police, through the DA's office, exactly the way it should have been done from the beginning. But before that happens, there's something I need to do first." He also reached out quietly to Angela herself, not through a phone call or a text message, but through Mrs. Higgins, who he trusted to deliver the message gently, given everything Angela had already endured. "Mr. Cole would like you to come to the house Friday evening," Mrs. Higgins told Angela over the phone, her voice warm and careful. "He says it's important. He says he knows the truth now, Angela. He believes you." Angela sat on the edge of her bed, phone pressed to her ear, tears sliding silently down her face. Not tears of sadness this time, but something she hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. Something that felt almost like hope. "Tell him I'll be there," she whispered. Friday evening arrived, and Daniel had arranged a small, quiet gathering at the mansion. Not the 200 guests from the engagement party, but a select group of close family friends, board members from his company's charitable foundation, a few reporters he trusted to report accurately rather than sensationally, and, most importantly, 2 plainclothes detectives who had been briefed fully on the situation earlier that day. Victoria arrived dressed elegantly, believing the gathering was meant to reassure their closest circle that the investigation into the Maid was proceeding smoothly, and that their relationship remained solid despite the recent scandal. She had no idea what was actually waiting for her. Angela arrived quietly through the back entrance, escorted gently by Mrs. Higgins, her heart pounding, unsure exactly what was about to happen but trusting, for the first time in weeks, that the truth was finally about to come out. Daniel stood near the same staircase where he had announced his engagement weeks earlier, watching the small crowd settle into the living room, watching Victoria smile and greet guests with the same practiced charm she always carried so effortlessly. He caught Angela's eyes across the room, gave her the smallest, most reassuring nod, and then turned to face the gathering. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he said, his voice steady, though his heart was pounding harder than it ever had in any business negotiation of his life. "I asked you here because 3 weeks ago something happened in this house that I got wrong. Very wrong. And tonight I intend to fix it." "Mama," Sophia said, tugging gently on her hand. "Is that really our name up there?" "It really is, baby," Angela said, her voice thick with emotion. "Why?" Angela knelt down beside her daughter, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and thought carefully about how to answer a question that held so much more weight than an 8-year-old could possibly understand yet. "Because sometimes," she said softly, "people will look at you and decide who they think you are based on what you have or what you don't have. And sometimes that's not fair, and it hurts more than anything else in the world. But if you stay honest and you stay strong and you never stop believing in your own truth, even when nobody else does at first, eventually the truth finds its way to the surface. It always does." Daniel watched from a short distance away, unnoticed for a moment, his heart full in a way it hadn't been in a very long time. He had learned something in those 6 weeks that no business deal, no boardroom negotiation, no amount of wealth had ever taught him, that a person's character isn't measured by how they treat the people who can do something for them. It's measured entirely by how they treat the people who can't. Angela Reyes had spent 6 years quietly proving her character to a family that, until that terrible night, had never truly been tested to prove theirs back. In the end, it wasn't the jewelry or the cash or even the money that mattered most. It was the truth. And the truth, no matter how long it takes, no matter how many people doubt it along the way, always eventually finds the light. If this story touched your heart tonight, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share it with someone you love, because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that the truth always finds its way home. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.